Welcome to Race Amity Day. I'm your co-host, Jean Arnaud, with Ash Hartwell from Citizens of Race Amity Now. We are joined by the Amherst Town Council, the Baha'i Local Spiritual Assembly, the League of Women Voters, the Interfaith Opportunities Network, and the Community Safety Working Group. The program opened with music from our local musician, Ntali Shakabanda of the Oneness Project from his recent album, Rites of Passage. A very warm welcome to all who have joined us today and to the more than 100 folks who have registered for this celebration.
Yeah, so Race Amity Day, it's a time to raise our consciousness of what it means to recognize and act on the truth of the oneness of humankind. And this means to recognize and acknowledge the fact that we're standing on and benefiting from land that has been taken from indigenous peoples, and that the Pecumtuck, Nahuatl, Waranoko, Agawam, Nipmuc, Abenaki peoples, and their descendants are living here among us.
The purpose for Race Amity Day, it's to recognize that social and racial justice in our community depends on strengthening bonds of respect, caring, and love across our ethnic, cultural experiences and identities.
And Race Amity Day also means to recognize that the recent rise of words and acts of racism in our country is built on an emotional attachment to a falsehood, the falsehood of race, an unfounded fear of losing white privilege, while we move towards greater racial and ethnic diversity in our nation, state, and town.
Here on this day, in this town of Amherst, we celebrate our diverse and rich cultures, colors, stories, and lives, and deepen our commitments to care for one another. Race Amity comes with a moral imperative for action. It means that we manifest in our relationships, in our engagements with the institutions and events of our town, a persistent commitment for acknowledging and healing the injustice and inequalities so long a part of our history. We note that the quest for amity and justice is at the heart of the spiritual teachings of all world religions and moral thought.
The celebration of Race Amity Day then is not only about promoting greater ties of friendship across our ethnic and racial identities. It's about embracing and acting on the truth that we are one human family. The program today begins with apart from that introduction and welcome, the movie An American Story. Jean?
It's a short trailer that really helps us put Race Amity Day into a historical context. Recognizing that so long as we've had a history of slavery and oppressions in America, there's also been another tradition. So this short trailer, it presents this other tradition.
That's going to be followed by Jean giving a story of his own journey to answer that question. So what is this race amity? What does it mean to me? That will be then followed by Marita Banda introducing Amilcar Shabazz, who will give a tribute to Ray Elliott, who is the founder of the Citizens for Race Amity Now. And we'll have the treat of listening to Ray's last words before his passing, about a few weeks before he passed, where he spoke to a large group, and he gave his wisdom and his love. We'll then turn to the town council, which every year since 2015 has provided us with a proclamation on Race Amity Day, and that proclamation will be read, and it expresses the values that the town has towards racial amity, and that will be followed by Brianna Owen and Alicia Walker having a presentation of the vision that they have for the town as expressed in the Community Safety Working Group's report, which is now a matter before the town to act on. And Annie Patterson, who is local composer and singer, nationally known for the work she's done, is going to sing a number called If Not Now. Very appropriate question. And that will be followed by a roundtable where Marcy Sklove and Peter Blood and Marita and Chuck Cooper will be reflecting on what racial amity means to them and how that relates to the issues of justice. And that will lead right into an open forum where we're going to be sharing our stories, our gifts, our thoughts, our questions. And that will be open mic as well as by chat. And we'll come to a closing with a few announcements, including the announcement of Juneteenth for next week and a closing prayer by Jarre Shepherd. So that's the outline of what you're going to have today. And we will now move towards the trailer of the movie An American Story.
An American Story traces the history of cross-cultural collaboration from the birth of the nation to the present day. Our history haunts us to this day, giving us the pervasive belief that racial conflict and inequality will forever be a part of the American landscape. But did you know there were integrated communities in the American South as early as the 1600s? That Quakers abolished slavery before the American Revolution? And that America's oldest civil rights organizations, like the NAACP and National Urban League, were founded as multiracial coalitions. This is the other tradition of American race relations, a history that has yet to be examined, a tradition that grew up alongside the Convention of Racism, a tradition built on close cross-racial collaboration, camaraderie, friendship, and mutual loving respect. This racial amity was forged by Americans who held onto the vision of E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
The other tradition is something where people from different racial ethnic groups have worked together to address social injustices throughout history.
We know about the tradition of racism, and it's important that we study the tradition of racism. But at the same time, we need to understand that there's a parallel tradition. In fact, they're interrelated.
There have been people all over the country, all through history, who have been able to envision a different kind of society.
The more obvious the crisis, the more cooperation you see among the races.
An American Story traces the history of cross-cultural collaboration from the birth of the nation to the present day. Join us in uncovering tales from America's earliest integrated communities, like the hardscrabble frontier town of Covert, Michigan. As early as the 1850s, the citizens of Covert ignored social norms, fugitive slave laws, and mandated segregation. Instead, they quietly created a community where blacks and whites shared everything, from a one-room schoolhouse to public office. Discover the friendships that reached across the color line and led to significant change during America's darkest hours, like the business partnership between wealthy iron worker Thomas Garrett and ex-slave Harriet Tubman. Learn about the woman Eleanor Roosevelt considered her closest friend, and what led the First Lady to break Alabama law so the two could sit together at the dinner table. Hear about the shared spiritual calling that led a rabbi to march alongside Dr. Martin Luther King, and see how a partnership between Cesar Chavez and Fred Ross gave rise to a powerful movement for the rights of migrant farm workers. An American Story honors the tillers of the soil and caretakers of the tradition of cross-cultural cooperation and amity. Enjoy expert commentary from Professor Cornel West, radio personality Celeste Headley, and other premier scholars in the field of positive race relations. An American Story offers a new lens through which we can all take a fresh look at our collective identity and reframe our vision of the future towards a revival of the dream of e pluribus unum, out of many, one.
So we'll move now to Jean's journey. What does race amity mean to him? And Jean, I'm going to put you on the screen. So Jean?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear? Yes. What is race amity to me? It's been a bit of a journey. I remember when I first heard of race amity, I was visiting Ray Elliott at his house, and he mentioned race amity. I was polite. I listened. My first impression was, what is this? It sounds a little bit wishy-washy, like are people just holding hands and singing? Well, I was thinking singing Kumbaya, but I remember saying to Ray, why don't we keep all the blacks in one side and all the whites in one group, and they can learn how to deal with their issues and then maybe come together and try to talk. And I remember thinking, and how do you make sure that they stay friends once the event is over? It all seems so impractical. But Ray said something that I remembered. He said, race amity is already part of American history. It's just that the Baha'is have been highlighting that special spirit with the conference. He mentioned that as much as America has had a racist history, there's also been a history of collaboration between blacks and whites, and to create transformative change. He wanted me to understand that race amity, he wanted me to understand that race amity as being an opportunity to celebrate that unsung spirit of friendship, and I saw his point. We have Patriot Day, we have Memorial Day, we celebrate individuals, but we often forget to see that friendship can also be a patriotic thing. But I remember thinking, what kind of friendship can possibly exist between a mouse and an elephant? The elephant will crush the mouse, sometimes even unintentionally. If there's a history of difference in power and privilege between us all, and I'm trying to be a friend, no matter how hard you try, all it takes is one misstep on your part, and I'm a bug. Now imagine if you decide to crush me intentionally, I'm a pancake. I like the idea of racial unity, but I couldn't honestly see how it was possible. I believe that whites would always look out for whites, and blacks needed to look out for blacks. I existed quietly with this um, dilemma, I guess you would say. So imagine my disbelief when recently I was tapped to help host Race Amity. My initial answer was no. At first they forgot about me. Then I got a follow-up email. I tried to make some legitimate, reasonable excuse, but it wasn't good enough. So here I am. I'm imagining our beloved friend Ray's looking down and laughing. Oh yeah, you got this. What are you gonna say now? So I decided to explore the topic deeply for me, looking at my own experiences, looking at philosophical discussions, looking at the spiritual writings, in the hopes that maybe that I could actually process this long-standing question at a level that would actually be helpful to me and certainly to you. So I began with a thought experiment. So I asked myself, well, when do we become friends? Let's say we have a group of random people or houses in a neighborhood. Does that make them friends? No. Well, certainly they have the potential to be friends. But what if the houses are in close proximity and they see each other often? Does that make them friends? What if the houses are in close proximity to each other? They see each other often, they go to the same church. I don't know, maybe they live in a cluster, let's say, for lack of a better word. Um, I guess we're getting closer, but why is that? Like, what is it about? Like, if we're visiting each other's houses and we get, what about that process? Well, I started thinking, well, when you visit me, you get to see my house, you get to see me in my element, you get to see the things in my life, things have meaning, you get to understand the things that have meaning to me, you get to understand the things that I value, you might even get to understand my virtues and my vices. But really, is everyone you invite to your house a true friend? Have you ever had someone you invite to your house because you can't wait to praise the Lord to guide them safely home? So obviously, not everyone who visits your home gets that privilege of friend, like friend, even though they get to see you in your element. So, and I suppose too, it depends if they keep getting invited. Again, they've got potential. Um, and when I think of the people that I do call friend, well, what state do they live in? What jobs do they do? Do I understand their dreams and aspirations? Do I understand the challenges that they have? Like, do I understand what makes them happy? Do I understand their needs? I feel like I was getting a little bit closer and thinking about this. And for me, I would say one of the criterias for me in terms of friendship is reciprocity and compassionate understanding. I often find that I want to stretch myself and listen to others' needs and understand the dreams, aspirations, and challenges and what makes them tick. And I mostly follow a live and let live when it comes to differing opinion. But I find there are few people that certainly the people that I do call friend also have the same qualities. We connect at that level. We can agree to disagree. They're able to hear my needs and show me that they understand. It's really a breath of fresh air. It's invigorating. So for me, true friendship has the potential to begin when I feel seen, when my needs and aspirations and the challenges are understood. But understanding is only half of the equation. I want my friends to be patient with me if I choose a different strategy than they would approve of or endorse. So live and let live. So that's the description of friendship that I started to go with. So now when I try to think about this in terms of race, what comes up is really, and I think about relations between blacks and whites and and I think about, the events of last year in terms of safety, um, and what I hear is this: do my feelings for safety matter to you? Do I count with you? Do you see me? And now it's not so much different on the other side either. For white folks, so if we go back and we try to think about what it would look like on that side, I think it would go, in some instances at least, can you see that my intentions are good despite my privilege? Do I count with you? Do you see me? So when I read Sojourner, so I mean, I think there's a kernel of truth in this, and it's and I see it especially in Sojourner Truth's poem, right? And I, a woman. So just a quick passage from her writing. She says, "Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman?" Obviously, I'm not a woman, but Sojourner Truth here. And she goes, "I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman?" And so, in thinking about what she's really saying to me, is exactly the same theme, which is, do you see me? This, of course, Sojourner Truth was speaking both as a Black woman, well, both in terms of the Black abolitionist movement, as well as the women's rights movement. At least some folks have used some of her this writing in that light, but still, the idea is there. Like, do you see me? Like, now I have a friend named Aristotle, very smart guy. He knows a lot about a lot. So I asked him what he thought, and here's what he says: there are 3 types of friendship. The first 2 kinds are accidental. The last one is intentional, like watering a garden. The first is a friend of utility or benefit. Whenever the benefit or utility ends, so does the friendship. Think of it like a business or work relationship. Once the connection, or the business end, changes, so does the nature of your connection. The second is based on pleasure, but once the taste or preference changes, so does the nature of the friendship. It's like think of it like college friends. Okay, you move on. But the last one is friendship based on virtue. This is based on mutual appreciation of the goodness of each other. And what's interesting is you can't experience this type of friendship if you lack empathy for others, according to Aristotle. And I remember asking him why empathy is a necessity for this type of friendship to develop. He said something. There was a lot of noise on the phone, so I couldn't quite hear what Aristotle was saying. But I kept thinking about this. Why is empathy a necessity for this type of friendship to develop? Well, if you think about, so I went back, I guess, looking at Race Amity in terms of history. When it started, Race Amity started at a time when America was still divided, when Blacks and white couldn't worship together, So you can't say that it was based on friends of benefit. You might not be drawn to be friends with people of a different race. It wouldn't benefit you materially if you were white, and you're likely to be excommunicated. It's kind of like going to Cuba after 1965 and being afraid you won't get a government job when you come back because they will think you're a communist. Sure, it could be pleasurable, but there was more pain, more stress for both race to make it even worth it. Who wants that kind of friendship? You become a magnet for trouble. You get trouble from white people, you get trouble from black people, and not to mention the challenges of maintaining a friendship in the first place. You are facing all kinds of defensive and internal struggles with this type of friendship. The only way it could make sense is if it is the third type of friendship, which is you are embracing a higher set of ideals. You see God through that person. And this type of friendship requires that you have empathy as you watch each other grow over time. I think that's the key, that it takes time. You would need to have admiration for the goodness in this other person, that it's not a relationship that's transactional, and that somehow the friendship inspire you to be your better self. And again, it's a tough journey. It's like you're going through ups and downs. It's like you're going through valleys. There's actually Baha'i writings that called the seven valleys that describe the journey of the souls to meet the divine. Now, of course, it's also recognized that these different stages exist simultaneously in all of us, but some are more expressed than others. But still, the point is, like you are going through these valleys as a way to grow, as a way to meet the divine. So just a short passage really quick from the seven valleys. And if by the help of God, he findeth on this journey a trace of the traceless friend, and inhaleth the fragrance of the long lost Joseph from the heavenly messenger, he shall straightway step into the valley of love and be dissolved in the fire of love. Now, if you know the Christian and Muslim writings, Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery, but through virtue and good deeds, he made his way to become Pharaoh's official, or his advisor. Of course, eventually his brothers came to Egypt. They were arrested, didn't recognize him. But, if you imagine how much love and torment it takes for him to forgive, or maybe not, or just that process of forgiving and his brother, or how much love his father, Jacob, must have had to cry so much that he went blind. So that the Seven Valley talks about about love, but also it goes on to say, in this city, the heaven of ecstasy is upraising, and the world illumining sun of yearning shines, and the fire of love is ablaze. And when the fire of love is ablaze, it burnt to ashes the harvest of reason. Now is the traveler unaware of himself and of aught besides himself. He seeth neither ignorance nor knowledge, neither doubt nor certitude. He knoweth not the morn of guidance from the night of error. He fleeth from unbelief and faith, and deadly poison is a balm to him. The steed of this valley is pain, and if there be no pain, this journey will never end. In this station, the lover hath no thought save the beloved, and seeketh no refuge save the friend. At every moment he offereth 100 lives in the path of the loved one. At every step he throweth 1,000 heads at the feet of the beloved. Now that's a lot of that really requires some time to process what all this means. But the key word I wanted to what is significant to me about this journey is that there is pain. It's painful to talk about race. Like we want to imagine, it's painful to talk about race. It's painful to talk, for me to talk about race with white folks. And I know it's painful for white folks as well, because I've watched so many of my friends, well-meaning friends, do all sort of defensive psychological acrobatics when talking race. And it makes sense. It really stretches you. It can trigger you. It can make you angry. But I would say this. There is maybe one key difference between the times that are most productive and the times that are not so productive. Now, and I find it begins like this. For me, before I go in, I need to say, Lord, help me. Before I go into because I know it can be painful. But honestly, I would say that I have seen in myself that I have made spiritual growth by approaching race, or race amity, or with this spirit that it's really a sacred and painful process that I need to be really aware. And so there's a certain attitude that I have to cultivate in myself going into that space. I've come to believe that this attitude is maybe is one of spiritual conference, and that's something that the Baha'i faith talks a lot about, but I know other religions do as well. But it's this. Well, let me just read this really quickly from Abdul Baha. They must, when coming together, turn their faces to the kingdom on high and ask aid from the realm of glory. They must then proceed with the utmost devotion, courtesy, dignity, care, and moderation to express their views. They must in every matter search out the truth and not insist upon their own opinion, for stubbornness and persistence in one's view will lead ultimately to discord and wrangling, and the truth will remain hidden. So in the end, I would say race amity is about that third type of friendship that Aristotle talks about to me. And that type of friendship means that we are not just in relationship with one another, but also calling in a third party to help us moderate moderate the friendship. So lastly, to finish off, I would say my greatest spiritual growth has come from diving into some of these tough race issues with a spiritual writing as my guidance, but also never being afraid to challenge myself, and never be afraid to challenge other people, but by approaching it with the spirit of self-honesty, self-care, and empathy, I think I've come to a place of understanding, appreciation. It's left me fearless because I know there is a well of support and abundance. And for me, this is how I would like to think that I've arrived at the Valley of Love, maybe. And so if this journey of race amity can transform an individual, I believe it definitely can transform a nation. That is, if we are willing to take the journey. So that is my journey of race amity. Thank you.